Sani Abacha, the general who stole billions while Nigerians starved. Between 1993 and 1998, 5 years, one man stole between $4 and $5 billion from the Nigerian people. Not millions, billions. While Nigerian hospitals had no medicine. While Nigerian schools had no books. While Nigerian roads crumbled into dust. While ordinary Nigerians queued for fuel in a country swimming in oil, one general was stuffing the nation's money into secret bank accounts in Switzerland, Luxembourg, Jersey, and the United States. His name was Sani Abacha. And what he did to Nigeria was not just corruption. It was a crime against an entire generation. How does a soldier born in Kano to a modest family die leaving behind a stolen fortune so large that 25 years later countries are still finding it in banks around the world? How does one man hold an entire nation of 100 million people hostage, executing those who resist, jailing those who speak, and stealing everything that isn't nailed down, while the world watches in near silence? And the question that haunts Nigeria most, where exactly did all that money go? Because decades later, billions are still missing, and the full story of Sani Abacha has never been completely told. Until tonight. Sani Abacha was born on September 20th, 1943, in Kano, northern Nigeria. He joined the Nigerian army at 18 and proved to be a military man of extraordinary instinct and ruthless ambition. By the time most men are still finding their feet, Abacha was already in the rooms where Nigeria's destiny was being decided. He participated in the 1983 coup that removed elected President Shehu Shagari. He was second in command during the 1985 coup that brought Ibrahim Babangida to power. He announced the annulment of the June 12, 1993 election, the election most Nigerians believe was won by Mashood Abiola on national television with a calm that chilled the nation. And then in November 1993, he overthrew the interim civilian government and declared himself head of state. He promised stability. He promised a return to democracy. He promised to fix the economy. Within months, it was clear that every promise was a lie. What Abacha actually had in mind was the most systematic looting of a nation's treasury in African history. Abacha's theft was not crude. It was not simply taking cash from a safe. It was a sophisticated financial operation that involved the Central Bank of Nigeria, fake security contracts, oil revenue manipulation, and a global network of banks and shell companies across at least 8 countries. Here's how it worked. Abacha placed his most trusted allies in key financial positions, including his national security advisor, Mohamed Gusau, and his son, Mohamed Abacha. They created fictitious security contracts, government payments for services that were never provided. Billions of naira were converted to dollars and transferred to offshore accounts under the names of shell companies registered in the British Virgin Islands, Liechtenstein, and Luxembourg. According to the Nigerian government's own investigations, Abacha's operatives would sometimes simply send government officials to the central bank with handwritten notes demanding cash. Hundreds of millions of dollars in physical cash in briefcases walked out of Nigeria's central bank on Abacha's personal instruction. The bank governor complied, because refusing Abacha meant disappearing. By 2014, Switzerland had repatriated $380 million, with a total of $1.2 billion returned by 2020. The United States returned $311 million, and 2020, Jersey repatriated $300 million in 2019 in video, and still decades later, billions remain unaccounted for, hidden in accounts that have never been found, and names that have never been traced, gone. But Abacha's crimes were not only financial, they were written in blood. Anyone who challenged his rule, journalist, activist, politician, or former head of state faced imprisonment, exile, or death. In 1994, former head of state Olusegun Obasanjo was arrested and sentenced to death, later commuted to life imprisonment on what most observers described as fabricated coup charges. Moshood Abiola, the man most Nigerians believe had won the 1993 election, was arrested and died in detention in 1998 under circumstances that have never been fully explained. But perhaps the most internationally condemned act of Abacha's regime was the execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa, a celebrated Nigerian writer, television producer, and environmental activist from the Ogoni people of the Niger Delta. Abacha hanged Ken Saro-Wiwa and 8 Ogoni compatriots in November 1995. Next left, after a trial so obviously rigged that witnesses later admitted they had been bribed to testify. Saro-Wiwa's crime? Leading peaceful protests against Shell Oil's environmental destruction of Ogoni land. His execution drew global condemnation. The Commonwealth of Nations suspended Nigeria's membership, and the United States and many Western countries cooled their bilateral relationships with Nigeria. Al-Africa, Abacha didn't care. And here is the twist that makes the Abacha story almost incomprehensible. Despite stealing between $4 and $5 billion, Nigeria's foreign reserves actually increased from $494 million in 1993 to $9.6 billion by 1997 under Abacha. External debt was reduced from $36 billion to $27 billion. Inflation was brought down from 54% to 8.5%. On paper, Nigeria's economy improved under Abacha, and that is perhaps the most disturbing revelation of all. A man could steal $5 billion from a nation and still leave its macroeconomic numbers looking better than before he arrived, which means only one thing: the amount of oil money flowing through Nigeria in the 1990s was so enormous, so incomprehensibly vast, that even after Abacha stole billions, there was still enough left to make the economy look functional. Nigeria was not poor because it had no money. Nigeria was poor because the people who controlled the money treated it as their personal property. Abacha was the most extreme example, but he was not the only one. $5 billion. Let that number sit with you for a moment. In the 1990s, $5 billion could have built hundreds of hospitals across Nigeria. It could have equipped every public school in the country. It could have built roads connecting every major city. It could have funded scholarships for an entire generation of Nigerian students. Instead, it sat in Swiss banks and Luxembourg vaults, in Jersey accounts, under the names of shell companies that existed only on paper, earning interest, growing, while Nigerian children studied under leaking roofs, while Nigerian mothers gave birth on hospital floors with no equipment, while Nigerian graduates lined up for jobs that didn't exist. And the most painful part, in 2002, a settlement was reached between the Obasanjo government and the Abacha family, which returned most of the recovered money to the government in exchange for dropping criminal prosecution. The family that benefited from the theft negotiated a deal, paid back a portion, and faced no prison, no trial, no accountability. The Nigerian government, so eager to recover what it could, gave away the one thing Nigerians needed most: justice. Sani Abacha died on June 8, 1998, officially of a heart attack. He was 54 years old. Some Nigerians celebrated in the streets, others mourned. Most simply felt a cautious relief that the nightmare might finally be ending. But here is what his death actually revealed: the system that made Abacha possible, the unchecked military power, the captured institutions, the compromised judiciary, the culture of silence enforced by fear. That system did not die with him. It simply changed its uniform, put on a suit, held elections, and continued. The billions Abacha stole are still being recovered today, to 27 years after his death. Governments around the world are still finding his money in their banking systems, which raises one final question that Nigeria has never answered. If one man could steal this much and the system survived him, how much is being stolen right now? By people still very much alive? In accounts that haven't been found yet? The silent mentor, because history whispers. We listen. Subscribe now, because the next secret is the one happening right now.